What is the appeal of long distances? Why seek out discomfort for such a long period of time? Surely, an hour a day of really hard running would tick most people's boxes. Why do you feel compelled to drag the suffering out over sometimes weeks and months?
Yeah, for me, I just find a lot of growth that comes through big efforts. And it's like the longer I seem to pull it out, the more I learn along the way. I find it really interesting that through the path, it's like while you are out there, I don't really feel that I'm gaining a lot. I just feel like I'm in the locker most of the time. But afterwards, when you have a time to process it all of these like parables to life lessons come to the forefront, and they're things that I feel like often would take a whole lifetime to learn, but I can concentrate that down to a much smaller amount of time. And that's really where the appeal comes. Like I get the shorter stuff. Like this year, I have been exploring the marathon distance and working on speed, but yeah, my heart always comes back to bigger endurance feats.
That's interesting. So do you feel at the time, a lot of the time when you're running, it's only in retrospect that you can glean the lessons that you're trying to learn? When you're actually out there, a lot of the time you just get it through.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's type 2 fun, right? Like it's in the moment, it's gritty. There's a lot of misery that goes with it, but it another aspect of it, it really lends itself to authenticity. I think in my life, I've always been a seeker of authentic experiences, an authentic way to live, and I see in our modern world, it's built around a lot of curated things, synthetic experiences. And when you put foot to pavement and you deplete yourself to no end, you're left with with like rawness that there's few other ways to find. Yeah, we live in a very posh, safe society. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm very thankful for that. There's a lot of people on earth right now that don't have that experience. But I think it is important for me as an individual to strip all that down and get back to the basics as much as I can. You know, these things also have an ebb and flow where you do these big efforts and then you're burnt out for a while. And that's the time you process and you learn and you say, hell no, I'm never doing that again. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, I guess I'm going to do that again.
What's the process for downloading your thoughts from a big run? Are you just sitting and thinking, with no phones, or are you journaling, or are you writing stuff? How do you get from the thoughts that you had during the run to lessons which you can then apply going forward?
For me, and I think I'm learning over the years, is first and foremost, it's to not like get too caught up in the downtime after. You know, when I first started doing these things, I got done with a big run, and then there was just a lot of time, a lull, where I was like, why am I not doing something else right now? Oh my gosh. And it's like, no, you need time. So first it's like accepting that aspect. And the quicker I can accept that, the quicker I start to process everything. And I usually really start to process it when I do get back to being active again. I learn, I dream, I process a lot while moving my body. So it's like right when I get back into it and I'm starting to just put in low, easy mileage and I have that time and space to think, I feel like that's where a lot of it comes from. It can take a couple weeks, a couple days, couple weeks, depending on how big the effort and all the surrounding factors. But yeah, it's amazing how I dream up this dumb shit while I'm running, and then I process it while running afterwards, and I train. It all ends up circling around movement.
One thing, which when I haven't done anything on the scale you done, but I've done a few over the night through the night, ultra-ish cycling events, and the big thing that I noticed was the acute sense of being disjointed from society. So I would be riding through a town at 10 p.m. at night in rural England, and there would be people watching the TV that you could see through. You could see people closing the curtains before they went to bed, people coming back from a restaurant, and then you're doing your thing, but the rest of society is doing their thing, and suddenly you
Yeah.
can feel quite lonely, because you're so disjointed, and that must be amplified 10 times, each and every day that you continue on. Have you found that, or is that something that's quite appealing?
I enjoy it. Yeah. And most of the times I'm doing big efforts, I am surrounded with community. I'm surrounded by, this posse of friends that I've made through this, that we support each other, or my wife's out there, or other friends and family. I find for the most part, I have more like concentrated good experiences with those I love, because we're together kind of doing exactly to what you're saying. Like, we're this little bubble that is existing amongst the rest of the world, and we have a very clear and defined goal, and we're all working towards it together. And I really do love that. And I mean, I've been in that exact situation you're talking about, except not on a bike. Like, I have crewed and paced my way across the UK, and I know exactly that. Just going through a little village and, yeah, seeing some old guy on his TV. Just to say what you said, yeah, it actually takes me back.
The worst is when it was like freezing cold. It was like 3 degrees, and then it started to snow. And then every pub in Britain has fires on. So you just every time you
Yeah,
went past, you're like, no.
totally.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. You mentioned sort of the crewing part there. You've been quite generous in your crewing, especially with Will Googe and stuff and this thing across America. Is that because you like crewing, or is it more of a transactional thing of you crew me, I'll crew you, or is there, you mentioned the community and the adversity that you go through together? What's the appeal with the crewing part?
Well, first and foremost, it's very specific to a couple people, and they're just, and Will being probably at the top of that list, who's like a brother to me. So in a lot of ways a selfless act of just like wanting to be there for him and watch him and other people, the people that I like to crew and pace, like watch them grow. Like, and it is a little bit of paying it forward. If people do it for me, I want to do it for others. That has got me in a pickle a couple of times, like talking about this publicly, because then everybody and their cousin reaches out, people I've never met. They're like, "Will you come crew or pace me?" And it's really nice. But no, I am very selfish in the fact that, like, we all have limited amount of time, and I'm going to put it to places and people I love. But yeah, it's as rewarding often as being the athlete. I've seen, speaking of Williams run across the US, I ran across the US in 2019. And then, I flipped roles 4 years later, five, whatever it's been, and was there for William. And it was interesting to see the process from the other lens. I'd say it's just as challenging in different ways. There were many days on Williams Transcon I was very envious of him. I was like, I just want the simplicity of being the runner right now. And then there were other days when he was miserable as fuck and it was raining and cold. And I was like, I'm so glad I'm in this truck right now. So yeah, it kind of goes both ways.
It must be nice, though, as a crew member to feel super confident in your ability because you have been there, you know what they need, you know what to say. Because there's nothing worse as an athlete than having an inexperienced team member who are really trying their best, but it's just disjointed, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, it lends itself to our success in these things. And progressively over the years, like we're becoming better athletes, especially multi-day stuff. I think the more times you do it, the less your body negatively reacts when you get out there. So we're gaining strength. We're getting better at this on that end, but also from the crew perspective. Like when we left from California for Will's Transcon, there were no questions. Like, we had it dialed in. We knew what we were doing. We knew how to do it. As kind of opposite side of the coin, when I did it in 2019, it was my first time ever doing anything like this. It was the first time any of my crew had done anything like this. And we were learning on the run. And it definitely lent itself to a slower start, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So currently, right now, what's your training routine? I know you got some things coming up. Are you clocking the big miles?
No, I'm not right now. I This year, I think I've just only recently identified this to fully grasp it for myself. But I did, at coming off of Will's Transcon, have a lot of burnout. Just from an athlete perspective, from being on the road for 3 months, away from home, away from my wife, and I really wasn't really sure where I fit in this space anymore. And I kind of allowed myself to go through that. And then I started marathon training at the beginning of the year, which I've never done, lower mileage, concentrating on speed. and got injured. So I actually found my way into the gym. And for the first time ever, I'm really enjoying it and doing it consistently and seeing gains. So I'm having very conscious and real conversations with my coach right now about I've done the work. Like I've put in heavy mileage and really like how much do I gain from logging 120, 130-mile weeks just for the sake of it. So trying to get more specificity in my training and again, more overall strength. So that's a long answer to no, not really. I'm heading to London on Wednesday. My wife and I are going to run the London Marathon. I'm not really trained up for it. She is. She's going to crush it. I'm going to suffer through it. Uh, and then when I get back, though, that's when really looking more towards like the training load required for a big ultra effort. Though it's not as long or multi-day, I'm going to do the Leadville 100 this August and really try to do it from a place of speed. Really like try to conquer that course in the lead up to it. I live like an hour from Leadville and see what I got there. And that'll be a little different. I've done Leadville in the past, but it was at the end of a 63-day effort where I had already done a bunch of other shit and my body was destroyed. And it was just about getting to the finish line, where now I want to get to the finish line a little bit quicker.
It's interesting. So you alluded to the Colorado Crush earlier there, but what's the training situation when something so big as that? What balance of mental freshness but also physical readiness are you striking? Or is it just a
Yeah,
complete completion?
no, it's definitely. I've found it's really important to find that edge, that line between in the build up in the training. Like, let's look more at like a transcontinental run. Training for that, you really want to get a high load. Like, you really got to train your body to take on that type of mileage, but not that type of mileage, not in the training, because if you do, you're already tearing your body down. So it's a fine line. You can't, like, I was running 315 miles a week when I ran across the US. You can't really train up to that. If so, you're already in the effort and you're going to come into it depleted. So I find like a really strong 3-month block, followed by a little bit of time off, another big, strong, like 3-month block. And then you really want to start like a long taper so that when you get to it, you're fresh enough. I actually like purposely put on weight before starting my run across the US so that I had something to burn through. And then, yeah, so then like the Colorado Crush was a little bit different. It was, in the mountains, it was not supported at times. It was really me relying on me. And I couldn't get up in that high altitude because my training blocks leading up to it were in the winter. So it was just getting as prepared as possible and then knowing that you're going to have to deal with a lot of adaptation along the way. What's really nice for me now is I've done a lot of that adaptation. So adaptation for me in big endurance events, the way I kind of look at that is there's a point where your body is going to say, no, I don't want to do this. Like, we don't do this. And it's your job to overcome that mentally, overcome the physical barriers. And what happens is our human body is amazing. It will adapt to just about anything. So you got to go through this phase of everything in you saying we shouldn't be doing it and say, no, we're going to do this. And your body just aligns to that. It's going to be painful. It's going to be an arduous, process. But once you get through it, that's where like the magic happens. And again, luckily now it's like my body's just like, a couple days into this, it doesn't freak out. It just says, all right, we know how to do that. We've already adapted. And that's where, you get to see progression in your abilities.
Do you put any? Obviously, you mentioned you have started going to the gym a bit, which is great. Do you do any other cross training? A lot of ultra guys do cycling to sort of supplement, get a bit of aerobic training in without the continual impact on your knees, hips, etc.
Yeah, I love the bike. I've found where the bike really shows up in my training is the real positive side is like after a big run, I know I need to move my body. It's going to be good for recovery, but I'm tired of running. I'm tired of the beating on my legs. And I find that like for a month, I'm like, I'm going to become a cyclist. And it lasts about a month for me. I'm like, I think I'll go back to running. But that low impact It's really good. I find it, yeah, happens a lot more for me in the recovery process. And then also, unfortunately, over the last couple of years, I keep having like a reoccurring ankle injury. And now I'm finding it's happening to both ankles. I almost can count on it happening annually. And the quickest way out of it for me is movement. And the bike seems to be the way to do that. If I can get on the bike, I can flush it out a lot quicker. The swelling goes down and I can get back to running. Um, as I age, as I like progress in this space, I'm finding that it's the way that I'm going to stay engaged with it all, though, is to find new ways to move my body. So cycling, getting in the gym, even just hiking. Like I'm when I get done with the London Marathon and I go into this Leadville block, I'm really planning to start really slow. And that's a lot of that is for my ankles. I'm just going to kind of ramp up by doing a lot of long hikes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I really do like to diversify. And the more older I get, the more I do that. I used to be very myopic, just running. Now blending a lot of stuff in.
So with the Colorado Crush, for example, how do you even come up with an idea like that? Do you know, obviously Transcon people have done it before, but it's still quite a unique event. But then there's thinking, oh, I'll do this really hard race or this really hard challenge, and then there's thinking, I'm going to do the race and then another race and then probably a few more races and then do this massive challenge in between. Like, where does it start on a run as an embryo and then grow over time, or is it just like, bang, I want to do this thing?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like things like running across the U.S. are very much just like I heard about it, it popped in my head, and I was like, I'm going to do that. Whereas to what you're saying, the Colorado Crush is a lot more unique of an effort. So for those listening, what I did is essentially I combined all of these big endurance bucket list items here in Colorado into one summer. So there's the Leadville Trail Series. There's a marathon in June, a 50 in July, and a 100 in August. Signed up for all three of those. Between the marathon and the 50, I ran the Colorado Trail, which is a trail 485 miles that crosses the Rockies in Colorado. I did it in 11 days. So then I ran the 50 miler. And then between the 50 and the 100, I summited all 58 peaks over 14,000 feet here in Colorado. We call them the 14ers. So yeah, it was this big effort. I kind of coined it. I came up with it. And for that one, it was built out of necessity. I was at a time and place in life where I kind of stepped away from sponsorship running, got a day job, fucking hated it, and was like, I was like, I had my reprieve from that job was to get in the mountains. And my wife and we did like 22 of the 14ers the summer before the Colorado Crush. And somewhere in there was where I started dreaming it up. And again, it came from necessity. It was from a place of, I'm not happy right now. I know this makes me happy. How can I get back to doing this all the time? And then it was like, well, that would require you to come up with a justification to see yourself in the mountains all summer. And yeah, these things just started to line up. I think it first started with like, I'll just do the Leadville Trail Series. And it was like, what are you going to do in between those races? Blah, blah, blah. And then it grew into what it was. And I'm just thankful to have found support when I needed it for things like that from some really supportive brands and had the tenacity to go after it. Because you really, like, so much is just like, my grandfather used to have this saying, he was a proud Texan, and it was, if you're going to shoot, shoot. And the idea being, if you come up with an idea, don't just sit around and not do it. Like, go for it. Like, give it all you got. And I think I'm proud of myself for leaning into that and yeah, dreaming this shit up and then finding a way to make it happen.
So that's super interesting about the day job thing. But then obviously you've got rent to pay or mortgage to pay, bills that need to be paid, and you found support with some brands to do this big project. What's the process behind something like that? Is it draw up a business plan, as it were, a vision board, and then pitch the brands? Or is it something a bit more complex?
I've refined it and gotten better at it over the years. I'd say now I'm really good at making a pitch deck. I think for anybody out there with any plan where you're going to need the support of others, being able to give people really concise and easy stuff with visual representations, a way to get them into the experience and get them excited about it, is really important. there's a double-edged sword with the current world we live in that social media is really important. And, the bigger that following, the more value you bring to a brand. That's a really interesting one and complex one for me. I think I'm a little too old to be like a natural Instagrammer. It doesn't come naturally to me, but I do see the value in telling my story online so that other people can get excited about it and brands find value. So building that up, I think, is important. I ask for the sake of my feed, just like, don't be a douchebag about it. Like, find a way to do it that's authentic to you. It's just like not just to gain followers. Like, bring some value in the storytelling or something. I'm not going to go too deep into my rant on that, but yeah, I mean, those things are important, and then it's just aligning with brands that see your vision and find value in you for whatever it is. And I think that's a key component beforehand, before shopping to a brand. Be thinking through, like, from this brand's perspective, what value can I bring? And that can find itself in a multitude of ways, but it's important to have that internal conversation before going to a brand and then just being like, duh, I just want you to pay for me to do shit. I've seen that. I've seen people try to do it that way. You're not going to get very far.
So visuals, social media, and identify value in which you can bring to a brand. What other bits of advice would you give to someone who was, say, had thought of a project and needed financial or sponsorship backing?
Again, I think it's like figuring out first, like looking at what you want to do, what are the aspects of that are going to be interesting to others, and then first targeting brands that you see a clear connection between those things. I think that's really, really important. And then when you get yourself in a situation where you are working with a brand, have clear deliverables so that nobody's disappointed at the end. I mean, that's key.
Yeah. So Colorado Crush, which was awesome, and
Yeah.
the film about it, which I will definitely link in the description because it's definitely worth going to check out. Was obviously there were several moments where you have to question your motives doing it because it's super hard. But what was if you had to sort of zoom out of where you are now, what was a big lesson and big takeaway that you took from that you then applied into life, normal life going forward?
Um, Colorado Crush was really, I feel like for me, like a very coming of age experience. We touch on it in the film. I do love that film. Reese Robinson, the filmmaker, is so talented. We've worked together since on a lot of projects. But I was at a place where I think, I was like 33, 34. It was a couple years ago when I did that. Where my father died when I was really young. I didn't really realize, only gradually over time, like how much that impacted who I was and how I was operating in life. And that expressed itself in many ways throughout my early, like, adulthood, from partying really hard to, just a lot of choices in life. Well, right before the Colorado Crush, his brother died. And it really, like, it hit home to me that there was like a lot of unfinished business of me trying to understand who I was as an adult, really starting to solidify myself into manhood. And I spent a lot of that effort, the Colorado Crush, sifting through those emotions and thoughts and trying to come to terms with my father's choices and how to take from those the positives to create the man I wanted to be. Um, so that was a lot of it, because what was great about the Colorado Crush was all of this was in the wilds of Colorado, much different than, say, running across the US, or a lot of the other efforts I've done have been on roads where you're constantly dodging cars, trucks, everything else. And it's very taxing in that way, where the Colorado Crush allowed me to just dream and wonder and sift through emotions and thoughts, because you're out, and exactly what nature should do for you is just like evoke emotion, evoke thought and stuff like that. So yeah, interpersonally, it was like coming out of it, I just felt really strong. I felt very confident in myself, in my abilities as an athlete, but also in my resolve to do big things. Like, that my Transcon run could have been a fluke. It could have been like, oh, I did this thing and that was just this thing, and I'll tell my grandkids about it one day. But after doing the Colorado Crush, it was like, no, this is me. This is where I'm going to establish myself for this portion of my life. Yeah. Sorry, a lot of long-winded answers, but I think that kind of summed that
It's
up.
awesome. How it should be. This is great. I feel like we're having a fireside chat. That's great. You mentioned grandkids there. From all of your adventures, all of the lessons which you've had to forge your way through in these massive adventures, what things will you teach your kids to take on in their lives? Are there any key takeaways from the big runs, or would you prescribe for them to do their own massive adventures and find all of these things out by themselves?
Yeah. I think, thinking if, my wife and I are, in the process of, we're contemplating kids, and from the things I've learned, I think one that was instilled in me at a young age, but I really only flexed later in life, was I was told by my mom all throughout childhood was, you can do anything you set your mind to, just carte blanche. Like if you can dream it up, you can do it. And I do believe that's true. That's true for all of us. There will be obstacles in the way, and those obstacles are part of the process. And it's really like defining an end goal and understanding that the path to get there is not fixed. And though you may have some thoughts and expectations about how you're going to get there, you have to be malleable. You have to work around the injuries. You got to work around mechanical failures. You got to work on all these things from the moment of conception until complete. So it's like being dynamic in setting strong goals, but then being dynamic on how you're going to get there. I think that's a big one. One I've learned over the years in all of this is no 2 days are the same. So like if I'm running across the US and I have a day and it just sucks, like I'm tired, I'm depleted, I don't want to be there. It's like being honest with that situation and living in it, and like getting through it, but with the understanding is the next day may be completely different. No day is correlated to the next. So when we're in ruts, when we're in bad times and places in life, just persevere, because it will get better at some point. I think that's key. That's helped me so much to like cope with anxiety and fears of the future. Fuck it. Like just keep going, keep trying, and you'll get to a better place. I think that's a really good one.
So kids is related to masculinity, some could say. What else is related to masculinity is facial hair. And you, my friend, have some terrific facial hair. So, bit of backstory. So, for those who didn't know, you had a massive beard, looked great, super rugged when you did your Transcon. And then suddenly there was this guy on my screen who was like rocking this amazing mustache. I was like, who's that? I'm like, oh my goodness, it's Robbie. And you've kind of fluctuated between a bit of stubble with a mow to a full mustache, which you're sporting right now. Is there any, backstory behind the facial hair choices, or does it just come and go?
I think a lot of it comes out of laziness. I can grow a beard like overnight, so it's like almost easier just to have it, so I don't have to shave all the time. And then I went from the big beard. It just felt right for the Transcon. It was like leaning into my like Forrest Gumpness. And then the mustache actually first showed. It was during COVID, and we were masking up, and the beard just was uncomfortable. And so I was like, well, let's just get rid of most of this. And my wife really likes it. So she's kind of the one that like is the reason I kind of teeter between it all. Like she'll be like eventually with the beard, like, can we please just get rid of the beard? Can we go back to the mustache? And it's best to keep your partner happy. So yeah.
Because it was your wife who was then your girlfriend who got you into running originally. Do you guys train a lot together at all? Because I often find every couple's different. And one thing that I think is the biggest advantage of any training athlete is having someone in the house who's on a similar mission. And because you pump each other up, you get each other out. And, if one of you is having a bad day, then the other one will get you out and vice versa. But what's the current situation now? Because she got you in, and then she's an amazing runner, and you've done all of these amazing things. What's the running dynamics within the household?
Yeah, a mutual like respect and support always. Um, right now, that's a good. You say that we haven't been running a lot together. I think a lot of that comes down to schedule. She is a labor and delivery nurse, so she goes into work really early, and she gets up even earlier. She runs at like 4:30 in the morning, and my circadian rhythm just hates it. I've done it. I get up and do it with her every now and then, and I'm just ruined for the rest of the day. So yeah, right now, not as much. I think this summer we will log a lot of miles together. She's a great trail runner. I am like my issue is I run so much more on the road. I've got a really strong engine, and often it like my legs take a while to catch up, and that's where I get into these ankle injuries. So she's the one really pushing for me to start slow this summer. We're going to do a lot of hiking. We're going to finish the 14ers that she hasn't completed. She's got like 18 left, I think, and I really we want to get up those. So yeah, this summer we'll be doing a lot together. She got me into running, like you said. We started dating. I was partying my face off, and she saw that it just really wasn't allowing me to be the person I wanted to be. Invited me out on a run, and I owe everything to her since. And yeah, she's a great athlete who's training her ass off for London right now, and I can't wait to see her perform. So yeah.
Is it true that Robbie, the man who ran across America, has done the Colorado Crush, got 2.5 miles into a run with her, and then had to call a cab home?
Yeah, honestly, that was our first run together. Living in Austin, Texas, she invited me out. I loved every second of it. But yeah, 2.5 miles in, I realized we hadn't turned around. I was like, "You want me to run back?" Like, no, 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 no. We're getting a juice, and you were going to get a cab home. But that started it all. It was like I needed to start there. But then the next day, like I was lacing up my shoes again, and then it just progressively got longer and longer. And I think there was a moment where Shelly, my wife, was like, "What is this I've created? like, what monster have you created here?" But yeah, I didn't even get into running until I was 29. It's been 10 years now. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
That's a non-serious question. When it comes to Strava, you don't post the maps of where you run. It's just stats only. Why is that?
For me, it's I'm actually haven't even uploaded anything to Strava in a couple of weeks. I just I don't know how much how good I feel about everybody sharing their location constantly. There's some creeps out there, and I don't know that I have any personally in my life, but you never know. And also, I live somewhere that is incredibly beautiful, incredibly just stunning, and I want to keep it that way. I aspirationally, like if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask me where great trails are, I'll tell you individually, but I don't really need to broadcast like this is where I live and you should all come here because that's just yeah. I don't know. It's a privacy thing more than anything. I just don't. It's not my vibe. Strava's not my vibe. I don't care what other people are up to. If I'm completely honest, I just like to do my thing, and I don't really care that people know the granular details of what I'm up to. Like
That's
I
funny.
like kind of keep the narrative like on my terms, which is me like when I want to share, I share. But like daily understanding like when and where I go out to run, like it just doesn't appeal to me. I don't judge anybody else. Like William loves Strava. He's like kudos mean more to him than anything, and I love that about him. But for me personally, it's just like
You mentioned the beautiful place that you live now. Was that part of the reason that you moved up to Colorado? Was the trails, the scenery, or was there a different reason? Because you were in Austin before, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in Austin. Yeah, it was multifaceted. A lot of it was, yeah, like Austin was great, is great for, if you want to party. And I was real good at that. And I just kind of lost interest in that. And my interest became a lot more about running. And this is just a better place for that. Yeah, the beauty, just, I did 10 years in Austin. It was time for a change. And I feel like Colorado was an aspirational place that I always loved, but never thought I'd actually live. And then then girlfriend, now wife, she wanted to go to nursing school, and there was a great program in Denver. So it was a little bit of everything. It was a little like, yeah, wanderlust, like wanting something different. It was also just very practical, and there was a really good program for her to get her bachelor's in nursing really quickly. So yeah, a little bit of both.
You mentioned that you had a day job for a bit and then hated it. A lot of people who I speak to quite enjoy having sort of the constancy of a job in addition to training for something that you're very
Yeah.
much all in all the time. How do you futurecast that going forward? Because obviously you can't rely solely on running, or maybe you're trying to, in terms of paying the bills. How are you going to try and navigate that heading forward?
I have in the past like done this full time and lived off sponsorships. I'm not right now. I do have a day job. I actually took over marketing and every like all forward facing stuff for one of my sponsors. Company's NuCalm. It's a neuroscience technology, app based neuroscience technology. Me and all of the runners around me, we use this as like a recovery tool amidst big efforts, but also after, before. And I saw an opening. I saw that I was getting burnt out on full sponsorship life, and I saw that they needed some help, and we have a good relationship. So yeah, I'm right now kind of moonlighting as a runner and working a full-time day job with tons of support from them. They're really great people. So yeah, it's a little bit of both. And yeah, but I think to what you're asking is like, how do you parlay this into the future? Like when I get worn out or too old for it. And it's the $1 million question. I really don't know. I ebb and flow with how I feel about my relationship with running the public scale of like projecting it and showing it to others. Um, yeah, it's honestly a very active conversation for me right now. Is like, yeah, how deep do I want to go into being like a voice within this space, or how much would I like to just get this back to just being this pure thing that I do and having my income come from other skill sets? I don't know. I don't really have a good answer. It's kind of right now, kind of all evolving and trying to figure it out.
So you work for NuCalm now, which is a super interesting brand. To someone who doesn't know or have never come across them before, what are you doing? How do they help? Because it's a super sort of cutting edge um, training and recovery specification,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So it's a neuroscience company, 34 years of research and development. The product's been on the market for actually 14 years, but it started as a class 3 medical device used in surgical procedures, especially dental procedures for people that have high anxiety. It was developed initially for people with immense PTSD. And so what it is through this non like linear algorithm delivered through binaural beats. So putting on headphones and an eye mask, it brings your brain through giving it these signals in each ear at like fluctuating times and non-repetitive patterns. It drops your brain into alpha theta waves. So alpha and theta is where our brain goes when we go into, say, deep meditation. This is also where the parasympathetic nervous system takes over. So we have our nervous system's made up of two parts: sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic, when we're working out, when we're living, fight or flight, that's where we're at. And then when you're trying to recover from all of those things on your downtime, that's where your parasympathetic should take over. We want to get into, and as athletes, into that parasympathetic as often as possible when we're not in the effort. That's what this does for us. So I use it like I'll get up in the morning, I'll work out, I'll run, I'll work for a bit, and then I'll do a NuCalm nap in the middle of the day. Allows me to get the most gains from that stuff I did in the morning while also coming back to the rest of my day fresh and able to tackle, say, another workout or just whatever I need to do in life. And then amidst big multi-day efforts, biphasic sleep cycle. So like the best example we have right now is when William ran across the US. He would run 30 miles in the morning. He would do a 30-minute NuCalm nap, and then he would put in anywhere between 20 and 30 more miles in the afternoon. It helps for recovery. He gets that 30 minutes, maximizes the gains he could get from recovery, comes back to the second half of the day fresh. That's on like a physical level. But then on a psychological level, it's really great because you essentially wake up to a new day. So you're breaking it up. It never really felt like, he was running 60 miles a day. He was running 30, having a nap, and then waking up and getting another 30 in. So it's a really, really amazing tool. I definitely recommend people check it out. If you go to NuCalm.com, NuCalm.com, there's a 7-day free trial. You don't even have to put in a credit card. And you can give it a try. We really recommend the rescue tracks. That's the real therapeutic core of it. And yeah, I really can't say enough about it. I'm a daily user, and I think it really helps to keep me balanced and clarity of mind.
So when you're having a NuCalm nap, are you actually asleep during it, or are you still conscious?
Depending on my levels of depletion, like you can fall asleep during it. You're still getting all of the therapeutic benefits. Often, if I'm not completely depleted, and where you normally would go in like a NuCalm session is kind of that melodic dream state between deep sleep and being awake. A great way, or a way I like to explain it is, like when sometimes you'll wake up in the morning and be half awake and you're like, I don't really want to wake up, but like I'm conscious. That's kind of the space you stay in while you're in it. And then really what's great is when you come out of it, because it doesn't really just bring you down, it brings you back up. So you do get into this like spot of like parasympathetic dominance. And then it brings you up and it ends with this very beautiful little chime. And you wake up really alert. It's a lot better than just a normal nap, and you come up kind of groggy and got to reset for your day. And then, interpersonally, what I love about it is I feel free of anxiety, and I also feel much more capable of taking on the day from a place of emotional balance, and not leading with just like extreme emotions dictating my decision-making process. Yeah, it's really great for that.
If you had to quantify the performance benefit that you receive from NuCalm in running terms, in like a percentage, do you think you would be able to put a number on it?
Amidst multi-day stuff, using it is the biggest factor to success for me. I would say it's a 20 to 30% gain. That
Wow.
just having, and where that is because it gives you structure around rest, and it assures that it's quality. Like if I'm not using it, like if I was to I've done it, like been out on big efforts midday or on a trail, been like, I got to stop for a second. And I'll even have just laid down on the side of a trail. You don't know what you're going to get. You may like get you might be like, that was amazing. 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later. Or it might be like, I just tossed and turned. I laid there and like my eyes were twitching because I couldn't really find a way to get the rest I was looking for. When you put on those headphones and that eye mask, it's almost assured that you're going to get quality out of it. And really, when it comes down to anything, we talk about recovery. The core of recovery is rest. We can use Normatec boots. We can do an ice bath, whatever you want. But if you can't get quality rest, the rest of it really doesn't matter. And this just really helps to assure that.
Talking about big multi-day things, we've spoken about the Colorado crush, but I also want to talk to you about the outlasting a Tesla. when I first read about that, oh man, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like I'm really proud of the effort of that itself. I think the premise, the Tesla part, was honestly a little clickbaity. So to anybody listening, what we did was there was a prescribed course outside of Austin, Texas, and we sent a Tesla ahead, and the idea was it was going to go until it completely ran out of battery, and then I had 72 hours to pass it, 76 hours to pass it, and it ended up going 280 miles. No, 200. I can't even remember anymore. I've done a couple 200 plus mile efforts. It went over 200 miles. I think it was like 240. And really, though, what was interesting is the Tesla was just this marker, but it really became like a battle against Texas. It was March in Texas, which usually you would expect pretty favorable weather. But true to Texas, it decided otherwise, and it was really, really hot. I think we topped out at like 97 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just brutally hot with like 80% humidity. And it was a fight to the end. I think it's still probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I really faced a lot of demons to surpass that Tesla 3 days later. It was
Do you feel under pressure at all from either sponsors or from yourself to always go bigger or always go better with what you're doing and the challenges
no,
that you're setting yourself?
no.
Or do you
I
feel like
think
at a time now? Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, not really. I think they need to be big, and I think they have to be intriguing to me, and they should be to those that want to follow along. But it's hard to beat a transcon. Like I started off with a bang. There's this very just old gangster of a runner. His name was Marshall Ulrich. He's done everything. I mean, everything. And he literally wrote the book about transcon. Him and another guy, Jason Ramiro, who's a friend of mine. He's a blind runner who ran across the U.S. They presented me when I finished my run across the U.S. with a belt buckle, and on it says "the real deal." And that's their thing is that the transcon is the real deal. Everything else is pales in comparison. So I've always kind of had that where it's like I started so big. I don't think I can one up that. The only way to one up that one would be to do it again and do it faster, which I don't really think I want to do. So no, I just think it's important to do things that speak to me, like from just I feel compelled and I feel interested in it, whether it be 100-mile race or running across a continent. No, I don't think I can one up myself all the time, and I don't want that pressure. I do want to do things that always challenge me and push the envelope for me personally.
So looking forward, we have the London Marathon that you're going to do, and then finish off the 14,000ers this summer. What else can we expect from you heading forward?
Leadville 100 for sure, late August. And then I have a FKT I want to go after. Should be about a 13-day effort in Asia. For now, that's all I'm going to release.
Amazing.
Really excited to talk to brands about it right now. It had been an idea from a couple years ago that I just lost focus on, but it's kind of come back to me as something I really want to do. And amidst being like a little at a place in life where I have a lot of responsibilities outside of running, like a 13-day effort seems manageable. Like I don't want to go out and do like 90 days right now, but I can step away from my life here at home for 13 days.
How intriguing. How intriguing. Well, I really look forward to seeing more about that. And I really appreciate your time coming on, Robbie. It's been super fun to chat, and you've been amazing and open. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. It's been fun.
Cool.